What is going on? It is Nate the Game Guy coming back with another video at hand, and today I want to talk to you guys about why it can suck having a very large game collection. Now, for everyone that has been following me for a while, you will already know that I have a very large game collection. Not the largest here on YouTube, but I can truthfully say this isn't really a small collection that I'm surrounded by right here in this room. And it isn't all sunshine and rainbows. And I'm going to talk to you guys about why, for some people, having a large game collection just may not make sense. So, of course, I'm going to be going over several reasons as to why you may not want to have a large game collection. Of course, these are some of the most notable ones that I can think of. I'm not going to rank them in any order. I'm just going to throw them out there and give them to you straight. So, without further ado, let's dive right into this video's subject. Take a look at why having a large game collection may not be so great right after the intro. Alright, so starting out the video when it comes to the subject of why having a big game collection can suck, I'm going to start it off with talking about that it's pretty easy to end up with duplicates. Let's face it, if you are a collector that has a pretty decently sized game collection, you're either using an app, you've got notes somewhere, or you're doing something to track how many games you've got in your collection, which games you have, which games you don't have, what console they're for, what condition it's in, all that stuff, right? So if for whatever reason you passed over a game that you either miscounted or you just didn't see, or just some type of mistake, right? Or you just did not add a certain game onto your app, your notes, whatever, there's a very good chance you might end up with a duplicate by accident, right? So say, for example, let's say I'm going game hunting and I either go to a thrift store, a game store, I shop online, whatever the case may be, I'm game hunting. And I happen to find a copy of NHL 2K2 for the Dreamcast, because currently I'm working on building my Sega Dreamcast set. And let's say I didn't put this game in to my app or my notes, and I decide to purchase said copy of the game because I see that I don't have it in my collection, and then I bring it back home, and then I look at my shelf, and I realize I actually have 2 copies of the game. Now, thankfully, it's very rare that I've had this happen to me, but it is something that has occurred. And, you know, if you're not tracking your collection, that's a real issue that you might come across, where you might end up with multiple copies of the same game, unless if you're like trying to hunt for variants and all that. But for the most part, that is one big flaw when it comes to collecting for a very large collection, is that, you know, unless if you're like very perfect and accurate and you never make mistakes at all, you don't have to worry about this. But since I'm human, and I'm sure everyone watching this video is human, that's a pretty realistic chance that you might end up with a duplicate by accident. And yeah, that's definitely one of the flaws when it comes to having a very big collection. Now, this is a big deal when it comes to having a large game collection, and that is, in the event you have to move, it can be a really huge deal. So let's face it, if for whatever reason you happen to move out of your apartment, you get a house finally, maybe you are trying to cut down on costs, maybe you have to move someplace cheaper, maybe you've got a new job opportunity and it requires you to move someplace, or whatever the case may be, where you have to move from where you're staying right now or living at the moment. And if you're going to take your game collection with you and it's really, really big, yeah, that can be a really huge thing. I mean, let's face it, it's going to take a lot of work to pack everything up, make sure everything is nice and secure in some of those moving boxes. Are the movers going to be careful and gentle with your stuff? There's a lot of factors into it, right? And let's face it, not everyone that's going to be moving your stuff around is necessarily going to care about it to the same degree as you are. And yeah, when it does come to having a big collection, that is something you might want to take into consideration. And that is, like I said, if you happen to move, yeah, it's going to be a big deal, and you got to make sure that everything is well protected. You've got everything picked up, you got everything organized, you're not leaving anything behind that shouldn't be left behind, making sure that once you have everything moved to your new place, that, you've got everything. Yeah, it can be a really huge headache. It can be very stressful, and yeah, that is something you might want to consider if you go into having a very large game collection. Now, of course, talking about more things that can suck about having a very large game collection is the fact that you're going to have a lot of games that you're probably not going to want to play. And let's face it, especially if you are someone who is a completionist, such as myself, where you're trying to get as many sets and libraries complete as possible, trying to finish every single game in said console's library, you're going to get a lot of games that you are never going to want to touch, play, whatever. The only reason that you're buying and collecting such game is just for you to say that you've got the entire library of games for said console. And don't get me wrong, it can definitely be fun trying to complete sets and having a complete set for a console. However, I would argue as well, even for collectors who still have large collections, that their goal that say that they want to buy games not only to collect them but also to play them, meaning that each game they have in their collection is also a game they are interested in playing and using and all that wonderful stuff. I would still argue that if their collections get big enough, that there are going to be times that they will probably end up with games that they will never want to play, or heaven forbid, never want to play again. And I've seen this often too, watching so many collectors over the years here on YouTube, where I've seen collectors say like they've picked up a game because they thought it looked cool, they wanted to play it, and then as many years go down the line, that game was never picked up and never played. Sure, it was picked up from the store, but it was never picked up off of that shelf, put into a game console, and actually played. So I will say, when it comes to having a very large collection, if you're somebody that just wants to get the games that you're just simply interested in playing, you don't want to have anything filler, you only care about the top tier quality stuff in your collection, what's like part of your taste in gaming, that might be a reason why you may want to not have a large collection. Or at least when your collection gets larger, you might want to just keep a little eye out on like what games you have specifically in your collection and really think about that. Hey, are you going to want to play this? And if the answer is no, then that's just another flaw just being talked about when it comes to having a large game collection. Now, this is something that I believe has to be talked about when it comes to having a very large game collection, and that is the fact that it can be quite a job to maintain. And what do I mean by this? What I mean by this is, say you're building up your collection, you're getting more games, you're getting more stuff, and everything's good to you, or so it may seem. And let's say you're running out of room. What are you going to do to make more room? Are you going to decide to get rid of some games you already have? Are you going to try to organize things a little differently? There's some things to consider with that. Also too, do you want to, how much do you care about your games? Do you really care about the condition of them? Do you just want to just play them. You don't really care if like the box gets scuffed up or there's some little dents or whatever, right? Is that something that you're going to care about? You know, you're going to want to make sure that, hey, you know, like whatever you're collecting is put someplace safe. You know, it's not going to fall down. You know, it's in a safe spot. You know, it's not going to get like fading or whatever from like the window or anything like that. And when it comes to caring for your collection, if you're somebody that's really into the hobby, you know, it can be quite a job, especially if you have a large collection. I've seen guys where their collections are way bigger than mine, and I have to say, like, don't get me wrong, I would love to have a larger collection, me personally, but I will say it does come with some responsibility that's involved with that too, especially if you're somebody that's like me that wants to keep everything as nice as possible, keep the condition as well as possible. You know, you just want everything to be just right about the collection. And I will say, the larger the collection, the more work it's going to be when it comes to making sure that collection is maintained, make sure it's like well organized. It's just a lot of things. So I will say, the larger the collection, the more responsibility that's involved in keeping sure that your collection is all good. Hey guys, thank you so much for checking out my video. Please be sure to check out these videos here, and here. After all, I post a lot of content when it comes to game collecting tips, and other video game related subjects. So be sure to keep an eye out every Monday and Friday where I upload consistently, and I'll be seeing you guys next time.